What's up, guys? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Also, please smash that like button on the video and enjoy the show. So they had to get off. They had to get away. Like, that's the one thing. If they're not going to kill... And I'm glad they didn't kill these people, by the way. Shout out for not doing that. But if they're not going to kill these people, what do they think they're going to do? Like, none of them are going to talk?
Well, I just think because they're undocumented, they're probably like they have nowhere to go, they have no resources and all that, and which they are, right? This is like, first of all, that lawsuit is like the first one I think of its kind, but it kind of shows the trend, right? Where like they get lured in, they're promised this one thing, and then all of a sudden they're held captive and they're working in brutal conditions. I don't know the conditions of New Mexico, but the ones that we're running in the desert, I mean, could you imagine living in a shack that's 110, no water? I mean, it's this all started, bro. Like I said, this was a Californian issue. And now it has spread. Southern Oregon has this issue too, because Southern Oregon, a lot of those guys work with the Northern Cali guys. And like I said, speaking to residents now we have it in Oklahoma, New Mexico, seeing it, and now the new state is Maine. And
Maine,
yeah. So if you want to just type in, bro, Maine Chinese grows, you'll see right now.
They're picking the whitest states in the union.
But all that weed's coming to here, bro. It's coming to New Jersey. It's coming to New York because these guys are willing to pay top dollar for that Cali tree. And they're always going to buy it through an illegal. They will always go illegal. Why would you go legal and pay even more on the taxes? So
yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem with a lot of the legalization.
So a lot of these illegal weed, bro, in Cali, they pick one guy as a driver, and then that guy's goal is to basically get all that marijuana and then transport it to New York without being stopped by the police.
All right, let's back this up for a minute with something you said a little while ago, because I want to get to the root core of this. So you were saying that in exchange for some of the products to put together fentanyl, that's why the cartels are making a deal with the Chinese. So there was this guy, Ben Westhoff, who wrote a book called Fentanyl Inc. You ever read that?
No, but I have heard of it. I heard it.
So he was on Joe Rogan in like 2019. It was a great conversation. Essentially, this guy was like a pop culture reporter. Like he wasn't reporting on drugs or anything like that. I forget what it was, but he was assigned some story on something, maybe in the music industry, and somewhere along the way, one of the people he interviewed made some offhand comment about fentanyl or whatever. Long story short, this guy starts asking him about it, learns more about it, starts looking into it himself, can't believe what's going on here, like holy shit, like this is exploding, and ends up writing this whole book on it. And as a part of that book, Savage, this dude literally went alone to China by himself as an undercover agent and just wanted to see how easy it was to get shit. And it was a joke. He walked out there with whatever he wanted. I can't remember he had to ship it home or whatever, but
it was easy, yeah.
Easy. So some of when you say that, I'm like, wouldn't it be easy for the cartels? If this guy's getting it, maybe it's more complicated. It's got to be more complicated than that. But in my head, I'm like,
probably huge amounts.
But still, like, I feel like there's got to be an easier way. That said, at the same time, the contra argument there is that, given some Chinese nationals or internationals coming in as immigrants, some weed fields is a small price to pay.
And what was crazy, man, is when we were doing the marijuana reporting, I've been covering the border. I was covering the border before marijuana. That's how I stumbled on it. But we weren't hit with that Chinese surge yet. Yeah. And we were putting out a lot of this reporting in 22. In the Oklahoma one, we did it early 23. But then early last year, I get a call from a Texas DPS, which is a Texas state trooper who works on the border under Operation Lone Star, it's called. So he calls
Operation Lone Star.
Yeah, so Operation Lone Star is Governor Greg Abbott's basically him putting the state police on the border, saying, help these guys out, stop fentanyl, stop criminals, get on it. So I get a call from a Texas DPS agent around, this is, I would say, January, March 2023. And he goes, hey, Jorge, I'm working here in the Rio Grande Valley, which is the RGV sector. And he goes, hey, man, for the first time ever, we're getting Chinese in South Texas. And I'm like, interesting. He's like, but it's not just the fact that we're getting Chinese. He says, we're looking at our numbers. He says, we have a 900% explosion in Chinese national now apprehensions in Rio Grande Valley, Texas. So I said, he's like, I think you should get down here if you can. So we get down to around McAllen, Texas, like I said, early 2023. And we look at the numbers and we saw that like I think in all of last year, Texas got like maybe 10 Chinese the whole year. And then now we're seeing that in 1 month they got like 1,100, and it was like kind of consistent. So that's where the guy came in. Like I said, we're seeing a 900% spike. So we hit the ground with him, and we're doing our thing, and boom, we start running into Chinese guys. And I was like, I couldn't believe, because I'm like, he's so right. Because at first I'm like, it's got to be rare. We're not gonna see any Chinese. It's gonna be like Venezuelans as always. Nope. In McAllen, running into Chinese to Chinese to Chinese, and so first, man, obviously we're trying to put an investigation together. Obviously, we don't speak Mandarin, so we're gonna have to use Google Translate and things like that. So we started piecing up things. So one of the first things that we learned instantly, this is through Texas DPS intelligence too, is that the reason why the Mexican cartel loves the Chinese migrant smuggling is because the Chinese are willing to pay cartel up to 35 grand to be smuggled into the U.S.
Whoa.
Where a Venezuelan, the most they could probably pay is maybe up to
5?
6 grand. Yeah, like in that range, they're not getting up to the tens or whatever. So then you have that aspect where these guys are willing to pay 35 grand. And then one thing you notice straight off the bat with the Chinese is that they look clean. Like they don't look like they trekked through a country. They're not, like when you run into a Venezuelan or any other nationality. I mean, they trek through Mexico. They've been living on the street, whatever. They look completely clean. Clean luggage, shoes, outfit, clean. So, what we learned is that first we learned about the price tag. So we started learning about that. Then I started doing interviews. See, that's in Maine right here. You guys see, Justice Department says Chinese cartels may be taking millions off illegal cargoes in Maine, dude. So then we started doing interviews on Google Translate and about, how are you guys getting into Mexico? What's the apparatus here? Because every nationality is different of how they get into the U.S. So we started learning through Google Translate with the Chinese. We're thankful that they were just open with us. Is what the Chinese were telling us is they have to fly to Ecuador, because Ecuador does not require travel visa from Chinese citizens. So a Chinese citizens, if they want to come into the U.S. in this migration journey thing that we're seeing, is through smugglers, with Mexican smugglers, with smugglers also in Colombia and Ecuador, and through WhatsApp, and through the Chinese one is WeChat, is they basically got coordinated in all the directions and tips. So basically the goal for Chinese, you first fly to Ecuador. Ecuador does not require a travel visa from a Chinese citizen. So it's not even a hassle. You fly right in. Once they fly into Ecuador, smugglers, and it's already coordinated in their chats, will then get them to Neocoli, Colombia. From Neocoli, Colombia, they have hotels just for Chinese migrants. So
Oh my god.
Yeah, so then the migrants will stay there in Neocoli, Colombia. Some will go through other different parts, but mainly they have to get to Neocoli, Colombia. From Neocoli, Colombia, they get on boats. I don't know if you want to just put this on Google Maps so you could see it. Just put like Neocoli, Colombia, Chinese, or any of that. So from there, the Chinese get on boats. Those boats will take them to Central America. They'll basically get to Panama. From there, the Chinese are going through the Darien Gap, which is, I think your viewers probably know, it's probably the most dangerous journey in the world, according to the Panamanian government too.
Why is that though?
Because all the kind of like narco criminals that control that jungle. It's just like the stories that we hear from interviewing migrants, the amount of dead bodies, the women that are constantly raped there. There you see a lot of the trees, so that's where you see like the trees with all the women's underwear there. I've done interviews and seen these videos myself to verify where migrants are literally walking over dead bodies in the Darien Gap, even kids, which it's tough to see. So it's super dangerous to go through. But the Chinese will take a boat from Neocoli, Colombia. They'll get to around that Panama area, and then from Panama they will go through the Darien Gap on foot. So even the Panamanian government, if you look at their records, has a record number of Chinese nationals because they have it registered of going through the Darien Gap. Once they go through the Darien Gap, we'll talk about this later too, but Nicaragua plays a key role in our immigration crisis because Nicaragua allows irregular migration to the U.S. and they know it too. They'll allow the Chinese to go through. They'll make it obviously to Guatemala, and they'll get to Tapachula, Mexico. So once they cross into Mexico, the first big border town for them is Tapachula. Technically, migrants are not allowed to go past Tapachula without a travel document because then they're technically in Mexico illegally. What Mexican officials are doing, and they're playing a role in this migration crisis, is they're issuing migrants, I'm doing this in air quotes, a humanitarian visa pass.
Oh boy.
So this humanitarian visa, normally it goes for 30 to 60 days. So this humanitarian visa technically it allows you to be in Mexico for 30 to 60 days and allows you to travel. The only reason government officials are issuing these travel visas is because they know these people are not going to stay in Mexico. They're headed to the U.S. So basically saying, here, Just go. Just get to the U.S.
Dump it over here.
So Chinese migrants are giving these travel visas, and all the nationalities, other too, but we're just talking about Chinese right now. Is they're giving these travel visas. From there, the Mexican smugglers through WeChat and WhatsApp have already coordinated their travel path. So the majority that we're finding out right now are either from Tapachula will get into Cancun or will get into Mexico City. From Cancun to Mexico City, they'll buy flights directly to Tijuana, Mexico. From Tijuana, the smugglers will then meet them at the airport, and then they'll take them an hour out of Tijuana in an area called Tecate, and they'll cross illegally into the area that you saw me earlier in, Jacumba Hot Springs, right out of San Diego. So that's kind of the what we learned through our interviews was this all starts in Ecuador. They up to 35,000 they're willing to be paid, and then as soon as they get into Mexico, government officials issue them that travel visa, so then they're freely allowed to travel. And then the smugglers have already coordinated the flights. They'll be like, hey, from Tapachula, we need you to make it to Cancun or Mexico City, and then from there they'll get to TJ right out of Tecate, and then into Jacumba Hot Springs, and that's kind of the migration trail for Chinese right now.
It's interesting that it starts in Ecuador. I just had Luis Navia in here. I think you were saying you checked out that episode. So one of the things he was telling me, I can't remember if he talked about this off camera or on, but either way, he's really wired in to this day to where shit's going down and whatever, because like he's worked with the government forever now. And he was like, Ecuador is a fucking mess. He's like, that's the next like cartel gang takedown spot. And I forget some of the details he was telling me. I think obviously some of it had to do with their government or whatever, but that's interesting that China would pick that as like the jump off point. And
some Chinese men actually fly to first they'll get to Istanbul, Turkey, and then some are getting issued fake documents in Turkey, and then will then fly into Ecuador.
How do they get issued fake? Like, is it like ID chief?
Like
what are they getting?
Well, it's literally like fake passports to just bypass, literally just getting on an airplane, and then I mean we find this more later in the reporting, but this, like I said, back in 2023, this was early on in Texas, Okay. So we learned about the Chinese migration. Like I said, we learned about how they're coming and little other things, which we found interesting. And then late last year, early this year, it just made a huge push into Tijuana. So then we started going to Tijuana, and then we started learning more about how the cartels were smuggling the Chinese there, making big bucks. But one thing that we noticed on the Tijuana border particularly is that all the Chinese will destroy their documents on the Mexican side or right on the border. So then when Border Patrol agents apprehend them, they have no documents. The vetting is super difficult for Chinese, because one thing you guys have to remember, if you're a Border Patrol agent and you vet these guys, you could really only go off information in the U.S., which if these guys have never been, you don't have that.
But what about the migrants though too? A lot of them haven't been, right?
Yeah, but this is particularly just the Chinese. The other thing here is, China's government does not share a database with the U.S. So if you're a Border Patrol agent, and let's say you come across this guy from China, and he's a communist soldier over there, or whatever the case is, you don't know. He could be a criminal in China. We don't know.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.